Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of A Simple Fix. I am your host, Olivia. I am so happy that you're here, and I'm so happy that I'm here because I took a break last week and I am back and I'm ready for another episode. I hope that things are feeling good for you, feeling springy, leading into summer. I am always convinced that Memorial Weekend, even though there's still almost like a month until summer actually starts, I'm convinced that it is the start of summer for everybody. So I've got my summer playlist, I got my summer hair, I got my braids done, and I'm just feeling all of the summer vibe. Got all of my plans and the things that I want to do on lock, and things are just feeling good. I want to quickly share my highs and lows so that we can get right into the episode. I have a couple funny highs. I think that I just feel like I am getting into the swing of things, feeling like that summer vibe. I'm really liking my closet again, feeling like I can wear the things that I really enjoy wearing without being too cold because it was snowing only 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe. I got my braids done. They're very long. I get them done every summer, give my hair a break, give myself just some time and some freedom. And this one's a funny one, but I have found a deodorant that works so well. I found it on TikTok, actually. There was another creator had done a little test, and I had to get my booty to Sephora and pick it up. It is the Cosa Sport deodorant, and it works so well. I'm not going to lie, I have been sniffing my armpits for the last week because I'm in disbelief. I'm in shock that it works as well as it does. And it's a serum. So any ingrown hairs or any discoloration, darkness that is happening in your underarms, it combats that. And I don't smell. I went on a pretty hefty hike yesterday with my friend and our dogs, and I didn't stink afterwards. So this really works, and the trick behind it is the alpha hydroxy acids that are in it. So what it does is it fights off all of the bad bacteria that makes your sweat stink. It's not an antiperspirant. I haven't used an antiperspirant in ages, but I didn't feel like I was sweating excessively either. I think that's so funny that that's my high, but it is what it is. That stuff is important, and it's exciting when you have felt like you've tried every single natural deodorant on the market, and this stuff actually really truly works. So, I mean, I'm a week in, but I'm pretty confident that it'll continue to be effective. My low for the week is we are right back in our luteal phase, and I have been procrastinating. I've been a little hard on myself. So I've been having to do a lot of reframing and a lot of reminding myself of the truth instead of my feelings surrounding my productivity and my mood and how I'm feeling internally and externally. I have found myself being highly distracted, whether that's from TikTok or just being overstimulated, and I haven't been as productive as I would like to be. But I always have to remind myself that Forbes came out with an article that was saying that the average corporate worker gets about 3 hours of concentrated work done every day. The rest of those, 8 hours in an 8-hour workday are filled with meetings and busy work and replying to emails and things like that. So I think that it's a successful day if I'm able to get 3 hours worth of work done where it's undivided attention dedicated to the task at hand. I'm excited for today's episode because it is the second edition of Ask Me Anything. So I sent out a message on TikTok and on Instagram to ask me anything. And I got some really great DMs. I've got 5 questions here that we're going to go through. And my usual disclaimer, I am simply a 26-year-old woman who has opinions, and I am sharing them with you. If you disagree, you have every right to, and I will not be held liable for any damage done resulting in listening to said advice. All right, so question number 1. How can I better create and keep habits for myself? I feel like I have so many dreams and goals, but I never follow through with them. My days end up being filled with distractions, and I'm over feeling like I'm wasting time on TikTok and mindless things. Oh, preach, preach, girl. I feel, especially this last week, like TikTok has had me in a chokehold. I think that this question kind of has a twofold answer. I believe that we can set goals and our goals can be changing habits, but it sounds like you have dreams also, and those habits are inhibiting you from being able to step into those dreams and taking action in making them happen. And I'll give a perfect example. I want to go to France, but I want to speak conversational French before I go. And I have my plans, but if I'm not creating a habit surrounding learning the language now, I'm going to get there and not be able to actually achieve that goal in its fullest. So it really is, there's a planning aspect of it, and there's also an accountability aspect to it as well. I believe I have an episode that talks about setting goals. I believe it's my Simple Fix tool number 1. And I plan my life out in 12-week increments. And there's an entire book about it called The 12-Week Year. And that allows me to see the progress that I am making throughout the entire year or throughout a certain period of time without feeling like I'm not making any progress or I'm not doing anything. I think the first step to creating new and better habits for yourself is to be realistic. If you wake up in the morning at 9 a.m. and you are wanting to start waking up at 6:30, don't expect yourself to wake up at 6:30 every single day for the rest of your life. Doing things incrementally can be very beneficial. So if you have a goal of waking up early in the morning, wake up at 8:30 one morning, 8 the next, 7:30, 7, 6:30, and ease yourself into it rather than throwing yourself in and setting yourself up for failure. And then as far as your dreams and your goals and those aspirations, really getting down to the bottom of it and defining it well so that you have a roadmap for yourself. I think it's really easy, at least for me, to look at a goal or a dream and only see the beginning and the end and nothing in between. But there are so many steps in between the beginning and the end that you need. And if we aren't able to identify them and lay them out properly, we get overwhelmed, we get discouraged, and we become stagnant. And the last thing I would say about, being filled with distractions, I can, like I said, 100% relate. I have found that self-accountability and incentivizing myself has been so helpful. For example, I didn't really want to listen to myself talk today, and I was having trouble procrastinating with recording this episode. But I gave myself an incentive. I said, if I can do this, I can go order that pair of shoes that I wanted. And now it doesn't always have to be material. It doesn't always have to be monetary, but it could be I get to go on a walk, or I get to go on a hike after this, or I get to go and hang out with my friends, and really giving yourself that validation and that reward after doing something that you want to procrastinate and want to keep yourself from doing. I also know that there are so many different tools and parameters. I started putting my phone in my bathroom. So at 10 p.m., my phone is in the bathroom. I am reading at night, and I'm not scrolling because I find my evenings and my weekends get completely full with social media when there are other things that I would rather be doing, but I sometimes don't have the accountability or the motivation to do them. I would say those are a few things that I would test out. And to recap, start your new habits incrementally. Don't focus just on the end goal, but look at all of the little steps that you can do in between and find those little victories. Create a method of self-accountability where you're incentivized by something that entices you and excites you. And I feel like you would at least be in a better situation than you are currently. Okay, question number 2. I'm a 26-year-old and I'll admit I have an overthinking problem, and it started to affect my relationships with other people, including my boyfriend, because I'm always trying to connect the dots that I know really shouldn't go together. I'm hyper aware of body language and always try to guess what people are thinking or be ahead of someone. The toughest part for me is once I climb into a rabbit hole, I can't get myself out. It's almost like I want to keep myself in this negative thought loop and make it worse for myself. I need to stop. Please help. Overthinking is a huge symptom of an anxious attachment style. And I love that you pointed out that you're hyper aware of body language. There are things that people can do. It could be a sigh. It could be a facial expression. It could be the tone of their voice or even what they don't say that causes people with anxious attachment to go into a spiral and start overthinking and anticipating for the worst and connecting the dots of things that have no correlation with one another. I would say first and foremost, this could be a very good thing to talk to a counselor or a therapist about. First of all, because everything is therapy worthy, but also there are a lot of underlying factors, and this could just simply be a symptom of all of those other factors. For example, if you have fear of abandonment or fear of rejection, and that is why you have the ability to go into these spirals of overthinking. But since therapy is not accessible for everyone, I think that understanding that our brains are kind of like a muscle and that we have control over our thoughts is so important. I remember I was listening to a podcast with a psychiatrist, and he was saying how we may not be able to control the first thought that comes into our minds, but we do have the power and the ability to control the second thought and the third thought and that whole entire chain of thoughts that come thereafter. And that gave me so much peace because I felt this pressure that everything that I was thinking had to be perfect and that it had to be aligned with the kind of person that I want to be. And our subconscious kind of just takes over sometimes and causes us to think crazy things. But I have the ability to rewire those thoughts, reframe those thoughts, and move forward in a new way. And you were saying how the toughest part for you is that you climb into this rabbit hole and that you can't get yourself out and that you kind of almost want to keep yourself in this negative thought loop. And that is completely valid because it is so much easier to run around in a path that has already been marked and has already been laid out because that's what our thought patterns are. They're previously formed neural pathways that become habitual. And habit is always easy to continue. And I'm glad that you noticed that it's really making it worse for you and not better necessarily. But that's the challenge, is to be able to create new neural pathways, new thought patterns, and beliefs that will allow you to have the ability and the power to climb yourself out of that rabbit hole. No, it is not easy, but there are so many different methods of being able to, what I call, rewire your brain. I love Dr. Caroline Leaf and the methods that she teaches. She's got hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes surrounding it, and she breaks it into really simple steps. I believe she also has an app and several books about it. A way that I like to reframe my thoughts and my beliefs is I identify that thought, that red flag, that trigger, the lie that I'm believing. I then go through some forgiveness of myself for believing that lie for so long. I also sometimes ask if this thought pattern, this trigger that came up, if it was in somebody else's voice, if it wasn't just me saying it to myself, like if it's, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. Well, maybe that wasn't my original thought. Who might have told me that? Was it a bully in school, or was it a teacher, or was it, a parent, whatever, because I recognize that oftentimes our biggest lies that we believe about a situation or about ourselves are from someone else. And then I take some time to process that. And then I just choose to release that lie or that trigger. And I replace it with the truth. And I will tell myself, the truth is, I've always been smart, or I've always been ambitious. I've always had a desire to be intelligent. That's where you would insert the truth about yourself or about the situation. And then you allow that new affirmation to sink in and you repeat it whenever that thought pattern goes back into the opposite direction. And when you're experiencing those overwhelming feelings again, and it slowly but surely creates a new pathway and a new belief system within yourself. I hope that this helps and that it is something that you will look, even a week in, 2 weeks in, a month in, you'll be able to see a difference if you stay diligent with it, because these things are not going to resolve themselves, and these things take work and energy, just like you going to the gym. It takes consistency. If you had the desire to become a bodybuilder and go and do a bodybuilding competition, but you went to the gym once, you wouldn't really expect very much progress or very many results, right? So that's the same with the things when it comes to our mental health, our feelings, and our emotions as well. Okay, question number 3. I've been loving listening to your TikToks about how you're healing from your breakup. What things are you not going to ignore in your next relationship that you ignored in the last? This is a great question. I'm going to err on the side of talking about myself and not talking about them, just because I don't need to air all of that. And because there's plenty that I've learned about myself from this breakup. 3 things come to my mind. In my last relationship, it was really easy for me to ignore my body's sensations, my feelings of discomfort, frustration, confusion. I would really brush it off and try to make it as if it wasn't a big deal. And I think that that is an unhealthy coping mechanism for people pleasers and for people who have an anxious attachment style. It's so easy to create a codependent relationship where their insecurity fuels all of their decisions and they deny their own basic human desires and their basic feelings and emotions for the benefit of somebody else. And in the end, it doesn't benefit anybody. So moving forward in my relationships, when something bothers me, when I feel a literal gut reaction or a sensation in my body telling me that, I don't feel safe here, or I don't feel respected or appreciated, that I'm not going to suppress it and bottle it in. I'm going to express it in a healthy, communicative way. But I think that that is one way that I can advocate for myself in my next relationship, because as amazing as your partners can be, you're the only one that can advocate for yourself. The second thing is I really ignored where I was overcompensating. And I wouldn't say overcompensating in the sense of my relationship and the things that I would do, but overcompensating in really only sharing the good things and really only talking about, the fun times and adventures and the good conversations that I had with my ex, rather than the things that kind of concerned me and the things that I saw that were red flags. And I didn't deem them to be red flaggy enough, as I said to my therapist. And she asked me, she was like, is there a scale? Is there a spectrum of red flags? I think that red flags are subjective. One person could tolerate a red flag where another person couldn't. Instead of me trying to ignore the red flags and overcompensate for the things that do bother me, I have to address them. And I have to trust that if it's something that bothers me and that it's not something that somebody is willing to discuss and create a game plan to resolve, then I'm not going to overcompensate. and pretend like it is not as big of a deal as it actually is. And the third thing, in my last relationship, I don't think that I said everything that I needed to say. I would, again, like I said, really bottle up my feelings for the protection of the other person. And I listened to a podcast recently where they were talking about emotional safety and how people pleasers have the tendency to be an emotionally unsafe space. Because when somebody asks you something or tells you something and you respond with a yes when you want to say no, or you respond with being like, that's totally fine when you aren't totally fine with it, you're being emotionally dishonest. And that was a really hard pill for me to swallow because I never want to be dishonest in a malicious way. I always say, you know what? It's not that big of a deal. Like, I am fine. I'll go along with this and it'll be completely fine and I don't have to worry about it. When the reality is, I'm being dishonest. Point blank, period. If I can't be honest with the person that I want to spend my life with, that is dangerous and that is going to be very messy. And that was, a lesson that I'm still learning. Well, I have an entire note in my notes app of times that I spoke the truth, even though it was uncomfortable, and times when I, didn't, and what I could do better the next time. And it's been so freeing having that awareness and actually putting the work into changing that and transforming that, because I want to be an emotionally safe space for my partner. I want to be somebody who is emotionally trustworthy, that when I say yes, my answer really is a resounding yes. And when I say no, that I'm not afraid of the outcome or the result, that I'm not afraid of abandonment or rejection because I am advocating for myself and speaking the truth. So I would say those are the three things that I 100% am going to move forward with in my next relationships. And it's not even me having to wait until my next relationship to put the work in. I am doing that with my family members and my friends and my work relationships now. I'm really taking time, and with myself, and I'm taking time to acknowledge what my body is telling me and how I'm feeling. And I'm acknowledging when I'm overcompensating for something that is maybe disappointing for me. And I am learning how to say what I need to say without the fear of other people's opinions or responses or reactions. And it feels good. It really does. Once you start getting the hang of it as a people pleaser, it feels good to be taking one more step out of that trap. Question number 4, how do I forgive myself for not following my passion? I had all these years and I had an idea about what skills I wanted to provide. I even had the tools a year ago and still haven't done anything. I'm in a constant state of planning instead of doing, always overwhelmed and pressured by choice paralysis and feeling like I don't have time. But when I look back, I had all the time in the world. Something that might be worth mentioning is that I'm kind of sad generally in my life because I left my family and started a new life from scratch in a different country almost 5 years ago. I'm just not really thriving. I'm distracting myself and running away from my sadness, but I can't really start living and doing what I want for some reason. I feel like I'm going to have different advice here. It sounds as if it's not just an issue of not following your passion, but it doesn't sound like you have found much fulfillment in the life that you're living right now. And the podcast episode I have in mind is about the circle of life. This circle of life has 12 different elements. It is everything from your finances and your career, your education, your health, your physical activity, your home cooking and home environment, your relationships, your social life, your joy, your spirituality, and creativity. And oftentimes, these things can be out of balance and we feel unfulfilled and unsatisfied with life. If I was in your current situation, I would really look at your social life and I would look at your community and even maybe your spirituality and acknowledge, examine, and see what is going on in those areas. I know that when I have tried to do things on my own, when I've tried to follow my passions and my desires and meet my goals in isolation, it's not effective. It doesn't work. You get burnt out. You're not motivated. You don't have any external encouragement or support. And you only have the capacity to survive at that point rather than thrive. Before you even start trying to figure out how to take those next steps when it comes to your passion, I would really do an evaluation of different areas of your life and what is going well and what is not. And then take simple steps to move forward in creating a more sustainable and fulfilling life for yourself. But then my next piece of advice would be, what I had said in the previous questions, create a game plan that is not just the end goal, but has all the steps in between. Also, I would say, maybe try to find somebody who could partner with you in this passion and in this goal. People are not meant to do things alone. And if it's a business, having a co-founder, somebody who is well aligned with your passion and your goal, there is no harm in that. And there are people out there that are looking for a concept, an idea to run with and to commit to. That's kind of my little rambling 2 cents surrounding this. I think recognizing where that sadness, that general sadness is coming from, and creating small and sustainable habits and steps to be able to find improvement, and then really look for community and look for people who are like-minded in your passions and your goals, and see how that works out for you. And the last question here, short and sweet. How do I come clean from a lie? I am terrified in all caps. This question makes me happy because it brings me back to quite a few years ago where I had been dating somebody, and on our first date, I had told just a little white lie, honestly, because I never thought that I would see him again. And really, in the end, we dated for like 4 months. But I had the hardest time coming clean from this little white lie that like slipped out of my mouth. And it could have been so easy to have just been like, wait, I don't know why I said that. Actually, this is the truth. And then it just piled and piled and piled. And I never felt like I could get out of this lie. And I remember being in therapy, and I had like a meltdown, and I was like, I know I have to come clean, but I am so terrified that he's going to think that I'm just crazy and that I am weird and that my whole life is a lie, all of these things. And so I was panicking and was so afraid. And I remember that my therapist had said to me, Olivia, if you tell the truth and he leaves, that's not a punishment. It's a consequence, and there are consequences in every aspect of life, and at least you got it off your chest. And if you tell him the truth and he stays, then it confirms that you can be honest and that you can be truthful without people leaving. So I remember I mustered up all the courage. I was so nervous, and I told him the truth. And he just like looked at me and laughed and was like, "That's it?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah." And then he's like, "You're so weird, but that's not that big of a deal." And we moved on. And I had the weight off of my shoulders, and it was liberating in the fact that I can make mistakes and that I can come clean, and that people aren't going to leave me, and they're not going to think I'm insane or that I'm crazy or that I'm a weirdo, that they're just going to understand that it's a part of the human experience. And so my advice to you, it's terrifying, but just do it. Think about, first of all, the weight being off of you holding something in for so long. People say that they will go to the grave with some of these secrets and these lies. I'm convinced that holding on to lies shortens your lifespan, and keeping secrets shortens your lifespan. Sure, you can take it to the grave with you, but it might come sooner than you think. I'm completely kidding. But if I can do it, you 100% can do it. And if this person that you have lied to is somebody who loves and cares and values you, they're going to respect you coming clean more than anything. But I can still feel that weight being lifted off of my shoulders and that pressure lifted off of my chest. It's very, very freeing, very liberating. And I encourage anyone and everyone, if you are holding in a lie or you're keeping a secret that needs to be shared or needs to be confessed, take a deep breath and just say it. Either way, whether they leave you or not, you're going to be at peace with yourself. And that is the most important thing. Anyways, those were the 5 questions today. I so appreciate you guys sending in questions. If you have any questions that are top of mind right now, feel free to DM me or send me a message, however you would like. All of my socials are down below. And I hope that these Ask Me Anything episodes are helpful to you. I love being able to share these questions and allow people to recognize that we all share very similar life experiences and that there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to the things that we struggle with, and that it helps you recognize that you're not alone. I will be back next Monday with a new episode. I am so looking forward to these next couple of months on this podcast. I think it'll be very fun and very exciting content that will be coming out. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next Monday.